Hello. Today we're on STAAR View Day 2 and we're talking about the real numbers topic. Within this topic, there's going to be about 4 questions on that STAAR test, and 2 of those 4 questions are going to be over ordering real numbers. Then you might have a question over classifying real numbers, a question over estimating square roots, or a question over scientific notation. Before we get started reviewing the real numbers, I want to show you some resources that you have in your STAAR Review packet or your folder. So right here we have the study sheet for the STAAR test. The topic real numbers, there's a bunch of stuff inside of it. So we have this first section that is ordering. Below that, we have the classifying. This is where we have that Venn diagram that talks about the real number system, where it breaks it up between rational numbers and irrational numbers. And it has some examples over here. Below that is scientific notation. And they have some examples of how to convert between decimal to scientific notation or scientific notation to decimal form. So these 3 sections right here all cover the real number system. And so that's a resource you have in your folder. Then you also have calculator steps, and one of the most important things in this topic is how to convert numbers to decimal form. So definitely this first section, converting fractions to decimals, but also squaring a number might be a possibility for converting to decimal, and finding the square root. So these 3 steps will be helpful for you in this topic. So let's talk about the real number system. Before we get into the main topic, which is ordering, I want to make sure we know how to convert everything to decimal form. So, for example, I'm going to put some numbers down here. We're just going to use our calculator to convert them to decimal form. So the first one I'm going to do is a percent. So if I have 47%, the easiest way to do this is to know that percent is always out of 100. So I can make a fraction that puts 47 over 100. And then I can go into my calculator. Start a new document. I can go into my calculator and I can convert that fraction to a decimal. Now there's 2 ways that we can convert a fraction to a decimal. The first way, the way that's written on your calculator notes, is I make a fraction by doing control divide. I put the 47 on top, the numerator, and then the 100 on the bottom, the denominator. Then I have to click out of the fraction to put that cursor on the outside. And then I do menu. I click number 2 for number, and I click number 1 for convert to fraction. And then if you see on your calculator, I have the fraction and then the little triangle, which means convert to, and then I want to convert it to a decimal. So then I just hit enter. So 47% is equal to 0.47 or 47 hundredths. Now, an easier way to do this. I make my fraction, so 47 over 100. And then I know I want to convert it to a decimal, so I'm going to do control, enter, which approximates it for me to a decimal form. So there's 2 ways to do it. It doesn't matter which way we do it. All right, the other one I want to do, we already kind of talked about, is a fraction, but I'm going to put a negative sign with it. So I have negative 23 halves, or negative 23 over 2. The negative symbol is right here next to the decimal. So I have negative, control divide, 23 over 2. I'm going to do control enter to convert it to a decimal, and I get negative 11.5. Then we're going to talk about what if I have a number that has a square root. So let's say I have the square root of 56. How would I put that into my calculator? So if you look at your calculator, you have the x squared button, but on top of that, there's the square root button. That means if I hit control x squared, the square root symbol pops up. And then I just type the number I want inside the square root symbol, and I hit enter. And it converts it for me to decimal form. Now there's a lot of numbers there. I'm just gonna round it to make it look like money. So I'm gonna put 2 decimal places. So the square root of 56 is equal to about 7.48. Now, what if I have a fraction that has a square root on top? How would I do that? Well, I make a fraction. I put the square root symbol on the top, not the whole thing, just the top. And now that looks like this. I'm going to do Control Enter, and I get 1.5. Now, what if I had a square root symbol that looked like that? 5 square root 7. Well, I type it in my calculator exactly like that. 5, square root symbol, 7. See how these match? That's what we want to see. I'm going to hit Enter, and I get a number with a bunch of decimals, but I'm going to round it to make it look like money. And the last example I have is where pi is involved. You should know where the pi button is on your calculator. It's at the bottom, underneath the double E or next to the H. So what if I have a number that looks like that, 3 pi? Well, I can go into my calculator and type it in exactly like that, 3, and then hit the pi button. See how they match? That's what I want to see. I'm going to hit Enter, and I'm going to round it to make it look like money, and I get 9.42. So whenever we are ordering numbers, it's important that, one, we convert everything to a decimal, but then we're also going to look at it like it's money and put it in the order that the question is asking for. So on the next page, they have some quick notes about how to convert everything or how to order numbers. Step 1, we want to convert them all to the same form. Like I said, decimals is the way to go. Here's some steps on how to get there. They're telling you to divide, all this other stuff. Use your calculator. It's the biggest tool that you have. And then step 2 is we're going to compare them using place value. I like to say, think money, right? We want to put everything in order thinking about money. And then we're going to order the values the way that they want us to. So in this example, here's the numbers that they gave them. They converted them all to decimal form. They lined them up so they could look at place value. And then they want to put them in order from least to greatest. So they're thinking about money. What is the least amount of money? Remember, the bigger the negative number is, the smaller it is. On the back side of this paper, okay, real world situations. Words and phrases that mean least to greatest. Okay, shortest to longest. Ascending, that means it's going up. Increasing, it's getting bigger. Fastest to slowest time, smallest to largest, right? So this is small to big. Words and phrases that mean greatest to least. So we're going smaller, longest to shortest. Descending, decreasing, slowest to fastest time, largest to smallest. Here are some examples that they might ask, or that you might see on the STAAR test. So this question, an engineer measured the angle of elevation for 3 different bridges. The angle of bridge A measures 486 over 25 degrees. The angle of bridge B measured 18.76 degrees, and the angle of bridge C measured 9 square root 5 degrees. Which shows the measurements from largest to smallest. Now, largest to smallest, it means from greatest to least. So I need to use these numbers, convert them all to decimal form, and then put them in order from greatest to least, biggest to smallest. So let's do that. So this first one, 486 over 25. I'm going to go into my calculator. I'm going to type in my fraction, 486 over 25. Control Enter to convert it to decimal, and I get 19.44. The second one, bridge B, they already did for me, 18.76. And then the last one, 9 square root 5. I'm going to go into my calculator and type it in exactly like that. 9 square root 5. I'm going to round it to make it look like money, so I got 20.12. Okay, so there are my 3 measurements. Now I need to think about money and put them in order from greatest to least. So what is the greatest amount of money up here? The greatest amount of money is $20. Then it would be $19. And then the last would be $18. So the answer is C, A, B. So the answer is A. Let's look at another example. The table shows the completion times of 4 runners in a race, which list shows the runners in order by the completion from fastest to slowest. So the fastest time is the smallest amount of time. So we're going from least to greatest. We have all these numbers here. We need to convert them to decimal. Now, one thing that we did not talk about was, what if I have a mixed number? How do I convert that? Well, I have 12.5. I know the $12, or the 12 is a whole number. It's a whole amount. So 12 whole dollars. And then I just need to convert the fraction part and put it after the decimal. So 1/2 is pretty easy. We should know that it's 0.5 or 0.50. But if you don't know that fraction off the top of your head, you're going to plug it into your calculator. So 12.5 converts to $12.50. The next one they did for us, $12.09. That last one, 12 2/5. I know the 12 is a whole number. I'm going to leave that alone. And then I just need to convert that 2/5. Now, I know that 2/5 as a fraction, or as a decimal, is 0.40 or 40 cents. But if you don't know, plug it in your calculator. So I got $12.40. And then the last one they did for me. And I'm going to put a 0 at the end so it all looks like money. So now, what is the smallest amount of money up here? The smallest amount of money is Ellen. She has $12.09. Then it would be Steve, $12.40. Then Joe, $12.50. And then last, Patty with $12.80. So the one that matches that is Ellen, Steve, Joe, Patty, which is C. And that is how we order real numbers. So now what you're going to do is on your Google form, you're going to complete all the questions that regard